When your teacher is being a complete jerk, sometimes you have to maliciously comply. We'll get to that in a bit, but first, need justification to purchase a box of tissues? You got it. In my early 30s, I, now 40-year-old female, worked for a university as a project manager. We were state-funded, and therefore every nickel of spending had to be run through our department accountant, who was not terribly well liked. She was very nitpicky, would demand documentation on some expenses but not others, and would be very condescending when she had to send stuff back for correction, aka done to her liking. It had nothing to do with being incorrect. Rumor had it that she only got and stayed in her position because she was related to a board member. That being said, I got used to her shenanigans pretty early and just did my best to get my purchases through her as quickly as possible so that I could continue my projects. About a year into my employment, I was handed a project that had been initiated by our director. It was a 5-year training program that was described to me as the director's baby. My manager got it off the ground and then passed it to me to maintain for the remainder of the program. I threw myself into this program not only because I enjoyed what I did, but also the director was cool as heck. I'm still friends with him on social media, and I wanted the program to succeed for him. I had a project coordinator that worked for me for detail stuff like ordering supplies and working with facilities. My focus was on budget, content, and working with the clients. After she and I had run several successful training sessions under this new program, we decided to order more supplies of standard training stuff like pens, notepads, name tags, etc. Something else we regularly used, per the director's request, was boxes of tissues, which for some unknown reason was not something we could get from our office supply vendor. My coordinator had been buying them in bulk at a warehouse store with her purchase card and then storing them in the basement, only taking what we needed for each training session. When she went to submit the receipt for the new container of tissue boxes, the accountant lit into her about how tissues were not an approved purchase, even when she showed the accountant an email from the beginning of the program showing that the director has requested tissues be provided to the participants. She stated that the director didn't make or enforce the purchasing policy, which is technically true. When my coordinator, who was normally a very bold and brassy lady, came into my office looking defeated and told me she was going to have to take the tissues back unless the accountant received sufficient written justification, I got ticked. I could have pushed the issue up the chain, but I didn't want to bother my manager or the director with this nonsense. Instead, I decided to do what I do best: be annoying. One thing I'm good at is writing extremely detailed bullcrap. I can elaborate on any detail, no matter how small. I'm especially good at it when I'm mad. So I popped myself down in front of my computer and, in one go, wrote a 5.5-page email. We did a print preview to see exactly how long it was, on why we needed boxes of tissues for this program. I never put in there because the director said so, but I listed off every other possible justification and then wrote a mini essay on each of those points. My coordinator was sitting in the corner of my office giggling as she watched my hands fly over the keyboard. I sent the email around noon. Just before quitting time, my coordinator stuck her head back into my office to let me know that the tissue purchase had been approved in our system. I never got a reply to my email. The accountant never said anything to me or my coordinator, but my coordinator never again got pushback on buying boxes of tissues. So the real question here is, do we really want to jump down the rabbit hole of investigating what those tissues were used for? And I'm gonna speak on behalf of everybody and say, no, we're probably better off not knowing. And I know that if I was a supervisor in that position and you sent me this ridiculously long email saying why you needed them, I'm not even gonna read it. I'm just gonna say, you know what? They're just tissues. Just take them. Take them. You're good. MYOB3 commented, "Ah yes, the foolishness of red tape. At one point, when my younger brother, an IT security manager for a major company, was visiting, he started complimenting my youngest son's keyboarding skills. He kept saying that he knew adults in his field whose fingers did not fly over the keys like that boys do. I just laughed. I asked him if he would tell the school district that. My kids were homeschooled. The school district was having a fit that they didn't have a separate keyboarding class. I kept telling them their curriculum is computer-based. It's integrated into their core program. It was like talking to a brick wall. I kept rewording, it is integrated in the curriculum. How many more ways do you want me to say it? It was a constant fight. They graduated, thank God. OP responded saying, I took a keyboarding class in school and learned jack all. You want to know where I learned to type fast? Playing chat room RPGs. You learn how to type really fast when your character is getting their butt beat in a battle. Also, hi, my name is Brendan, and if you guys enjoy these malicious compliance videos, it would be awesome if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to our podcast. That said, our next story is New Boss is Upset About Overtime. Long story. I've worked aviation EMS as a pilot for many years after retiring from the military. Great stable job and still serving the local communities, so a sense of pride in community service is maintained. In the last few years, corporate decided that our flight volume was such that a second helicopter be stationed, co-located, with us as we're constantly one of the top performing bases in the company. Long story short, a different type of helicopter with different capabilities has to be co-located with us. Said new aircraft had a mix of a sister company ownership and our company nurses and medics. Odd setup. Different companies under one umbrella, but different rules for the crews. Crew equals nurse and medic. As a top performer, in the meantime, our base was given a newer, much faster aircraft with the hopes of increasing our already stellar productivity. We were always first call as the other base aircraft was on reserve. Massive animosity ensued as our base would get 3 to 5 flights a day while the reserve, more capable aircraft was on hold for possible turndowns. Nurses and medics all employed by the same company. Regardless of our base was first call and often did back-to-back-to-back calls while the other, newer, more stable-based aircraft sat on reserve even on sever clear days. More animosity. Fast forward to one of the nurses on the crap end of the stick being promoted to boss of both bases as far as base operations and facilities are concerned. Changes made in equitable flight volume distribution changes in effect, and now the workload is much more even and honestly fair. But quick changes come with a reality check. Dope deals were made behind the scenes between, and the two air bosses agreed who would take what flight and when. This information didn't trickle down to me or my other pilot who worked the opposite shift. That's important since we pilots generally show up 30 minutes or so early to help avoid late flights where we can't bring the crew back. We have strict flight time regs we have to follow per the FAA or certificate action can happen. Read, we stop flying forever. Background set for non-aviation folks. I walk in one day, 30 minutes early as usual, and hear the tones go off. Flight request. I take it and we complete the flight with no issues, except the flurry of phone calls I get asking why I took it. Reminder that the new rules on which base takes which flight when are beyond me. I'm confused by the question and politely tell them to F off because I literally just did my job. As the new base boss was still on the flight schedule for the day, I was elated to have a face-to-face about it. I was reamed about taking crews on overtime. What? Excuse you? That has never been a thing in almost a decade I've worked here. We get the patient where they need to go. Overtime be danged. That's our freaking job. Cue malicious compliance. Okay, if paying overtime is now a thing, I'll comply. If we get a flight request that even remotely looks close to having overtime being paid, I'll call for approval before accepting. I don't want to pee off the mythical bean counters in lieu of potentially saving a life. This is not, by the way, a normal process to take a flight, and I will not decline one over it. But I've enjoyed waking the boss up at all hours of the night over it. I didn't start this, just complying. I've asked for written guidance on new policies, but until then, the 3 a.m. call will just keep coming. So yeah, my thoughts on this are that this is honestly pretty silly, let's be real. And I'd be lying if I said I probably wouldn't have been a smart aleck in this situation as well. You know, when you're treating people, when you're helping patients, like why are the hours that your employees are working, why is that even a thing, right? You're there to help people, make people well. So yeah, screw that. If they want to have their little policy and I'm in danger of working overtime, yep, you're going to be on call 24/7. I'm going to blow up the supervisor at 3 o'clock in the morning because, I can't get my overtime. Derpy Fox commented, "Been there. Nothing beats waiting all around geared up and waiting for the tick of approval from a middle manager with a god complex. Response timings will slide out, or if he's out one day, call the next level up and ask for approval. Then wait for the crap to slide back down to him. Our next story is, we need more detail in my annual performance self-appraisal? Sure thing, boss. At the end of every year, we have to do this ridiculous self-appraisal as part of our performance review. Normally, it's 3 or 4 questions based on your goals for the past year. Did you accomplish your goals? What roadblocks did you overcome? How did you become a better employee, etc. This year I got a new boss who, instead of the usual 5 goals, assigned me 25. Yes, a total of 25 highly specific goals for me to accomplish throughout the year. Since January, I've been knocking them down and moving to the next one, or working on long-range projects that included multiple goals. I did really well, all things considered, and even got a promotion. Nice! That brings us to the next performance evaluation. I had a lot of goals, 25 of them if you recall. My plan was to write a short essay that broke down the year by quarter and outlined all of the goals I met in a short description of how meeting that goal helped the team make progress. Clean, simple, and complete. Except my boss has this form. This form includes 6 sections with 4 to 7 questions per section, for a total of 33 separate questions per goal. That's 825 questions. Each question requires at least 150 words to be considered complete. He handed me the evaluation packet last week and said I needed to turn it in by Thanksgiving. After getting a couple of questions into the thing, I realized it wasn't just asking for narrative, but data and analysis. Sometimes multiple data points per question. I spent 2 entire days just completing one goal, which comprised 12 written pages, 2 spreadsheets, and 14 separate graphics. Doing the math, I realized it was going to take me 48 business days to complete the remainder. I asked my boss if this is really what he intended, and he said, just do it like I said. Sure thing. I cleared my calendar through Thanksgiving. Not one meeting. Declined all project requests in Asana. Turned on Busy in Teams. Turned on auto replies in Outlook for a full month. When my boss's boss, our VP, came by and asked why I wasn't responding to any requests or responding to email, I explained the situation. What's funny is he said, yeah, he's a real stickler for detail. I guess he needs to learn how to deal with reality. Carry on. I'm up to about 130 odd written pages. This thing is going to be bigger than my dissertation, and he still hasn't come by to ask why I'm not coming to meetings anymore. Maybe this really is what he wants, a team lead doing useless paperwork for 6 weeks. Whatever, they're paying me. So this seems quite menial and needlessly tedious and long, but, if you're getting paid for it, evidently they don't mind doing this more so than the actual job itself that they're supposed to be doing. So think of it as a sabbatical, a little staycation if you will. Popular Drummer 7989 commented, OP, make sure to include a bullet summarizing the total time you spent completing this exercise, the number of meetings you didn't attend, the number of emails you didn't answer, etc. Why? Well, when the next person asks for efficiency improvements, you can explain how much money the company will save by eliminating the annual review process. Micromanaging ignorant bosses want data to beat you with. Fail faster. It's my favorite corporate platitude. You got this. Our next story is, you don't want me to help customers in different department? Then don't be surprised by complaints. About 10 years ago, I've applied to work at a retail store selling different tech. It's a rather large chain in the UK and can get pretty busy, especially after 5 p.m. or during holidays and sales. When I applied for a job, I wanted to go to the computing department as I was very passionate about different builds and had some experience in building my own PC. Instead, I was temporarily placed on white goods, fridges, washing machines, etc., for training even after I've admitted I know absolutely nothing about them. But no, apparently this knowledge should have been inherited through my genes since I'm a girl, so I must know about them and be very good. So I bit my tongue and waited as I needed money and was fresh out of uni. About a few months in, I've realized I'm not going to be transferred to the computing department, no matter how much I wanted to. My sales were good, but the managers wouldn't budge as they were scared I might advise something wrong. It was a start of school term and the store was getting pretty busy. A couple came in wanting to buy a PC for their teenage kid to game on. I wanted to help them as a fellow gamer myself, but got rudely pulled back by my manager and was told unless we were assigned to a specific department, we are not allowed to help customers or advise them. so he fetched another colleague who carried on assisting the parents. As it was quiet in my department, I was doing some tidying up around the store and heard the colleague trying to sell the parents one of the Apple PCs, saying they'll be great for gaming and all professionals use them. At the time, we had a bigger commission from Apple brand. Let me tell you, they are not the best machines for gaming, and if you're into heavier games, they're likely not going to run that well or be compatible with the OS. I don't know what else the colleague said, but the parents believed him and got an iMac for the kid. The manager was very proud of the colleague and told me to use him as an example of a good sale for the store. I've told him I could have topped it and the customer will come back with a return, but was told again not to go to the computing department. Cue malicious compliance. A few days later, it was a really busy day in the store, especially PCs due to back-to-school sale. A few people were off sick due to being overworked, so the computing department had like 2 people on the floor, including the work colleague who sold the iMac. The parents came through the door with the PC they got, which usually means something broke down or they want to return it. They saw the guy who sold them the PC and started heading his way. He saw them too and decided it's time to go on lunch, leaving one colleague on the floor in the department. The parents are visibly getting angry and try to go to the till, but after being in the queue are told to catch another colleague from the tech department as we can't process refunds at the till for large items. The parents approach me as I don't have much to do and ask for help. I would be happy to do so, but remembering what the manager said, I had to tell them I can't as I'm not allowed to do anything with the PC department as it is a store policy. The parents approach more colleagues and keep hearing the same excuse. Obviously, they're getting more and more angry. So are other customers who want to buy something but can't since only people in computing department are allowed to sell stuff for computers. They try to grab the only person on the floor, but he's already busy with other customers and can't assist them. The other colleague responsible for the sale signed out for the day and the other is late. In about 20 minutes, there's a massive queue by the tills of angry customers demanding to speak to the manager. The poor person at the till has no choice but to fetch the store manager and floor managers due to the amount of angry customers. They're trying to shift the blame on us, other store colleagues, but I mention what the other manager said about not touching anything in tech department or help customers as we're not authorized, and since it's a company policy and we haven't received the training, we have to comply. Of course, it makes customers even more angry and feel like their time is wasted, resulting in a commotion by the tills and further delays for other customers. I'm unsure how the entire situation ended, as I was grabbed by an older lady to help her, but that day we had a lot of complaints on different websites about the policy and store staff refusing to help as it's not their department. And we had a few brainstorming sessions after how to reduce complaints with none of the ideas taken on board. You would hope they would learn something and change the policy, but no. They gave extra training to the people already in computing department and allowed other colleagues to sell smaller items like mice, keyboards, consoles, games, printers, but not the laptops or PC or VR, resulting in more complaints. Last time I've been there to buy my mom a new laptop, had a voucher, the situation seemed to have stayed the same, as we ended up waiting around 45 minutes for someone to push the sale through. At least I got a chance to complain to the store manager, as well as telling him everything I think about that store policy. So this is just a bad policy and a bad plan with no contingencies. If anyone needs training, it's the managers who are leading this crap show. Nothing about what was described by OP here makes any sense and could have been easily prevented and avoided, so yeah. Reap what you sow, as they say. A dad of triplets commented, sounds rather like Curry's if you ask me. The staff there on the PC section don't know their arse from their elbow, and it's the same with pretty much all the sections. I've been in there to have a look, knowing all about the product, and will ask questions I already know the answer to, and the BS to try and make the sale. One time I had tried to buy a PC from them. They didn't have it in stock. Then I found eBuyer and Scan Computers, and that was the last time I ever thought about buying a PC from Curry's. I've only ever found one salesperson in Curry's who wasn't interested in making a sale, only discussing the finer details about tumble dryers and which one was better to go for. Still went online to Costco and got it delivered from there afterwards though, as the warranty is much better than Curry's. 2 years versus 1 year. OP responded saying, "I was trying very hard not to name them, but yeah, the sales policies are insane. Managers telling staff to add the care plan as direct debit and instead make it sound like a discount to get commission and hoping the customer wouldn't notice. They throw a fit if a customer refuses to take the care plan, and the time before, Mom was buying an all-in-one PC and the sales colleague threw a fit because she refused to listen to his recommendation. He kept saying it's not in stock and then he wouldn't sell it to her, etc." Our next story is Daily Mass and Confession at my Catholic high school, or how I kept myself and friends from any consequences of our troublemaking. Recently told this story in another thread and was told it would do well here. Please feel free to delete if it doesn't meet the sub-rules and subject. I was raised in a devout Roman Catholic family who sent myself and my siblings to Catholic-run schools from kindergarten through high school. For this to make sense, some basic understanding of Catholic religious doctrine is needed. I'll keep it brief. Catholics practice something called the Sacrament of Holy Confession. The belief is that if you confess your sins to a priest and truly repent for what you've done, the priest has the power to forgive your sins in the eyes of God. Most churches will have things called confessionals for this purpose. While some newer ones are small rooms with chairs, the classic confessional is like a small closet, with the priest sitting in a closet next to you, separated by a privacy screen. Usually, confession will be held after a morning daily mass service. One or more priests will set up in the confessional, congregants will go in one by one and say their confession, etc. Now, the bond of the confessional is abhorrently sacrosanct within the church. Think of it like a lawyer-client privilege. A priest is never, ever supposed to share anything they learn in the confessional, nor act on any information they learn. Priests have been executed by their government for refusing to testify in a trial about something they hear in a confessional. If a priest is found to have broken this bond, he will be defrocked, basically kicked out of the priesthood, and could possibly even be excommunicated. Kicked out of the entire church, shunned, rejected by any devout Catholic, etc. It's a big deal. So much so that the policy for priests is that even if they later learn something through normal means that they originally first learned in the confessional, they're not allowed to act on that information, lest it even give the impression to the person who confessed that the priest was breaking the bond of the confessional. This last part is important. Well, sophomore year, my Catholic high school had its administration taken over by the Salesians, a religious order, brothers and monks, who were dedicated to educating children. Our new principal was a Salesian priest, and started holding daily mass in our campus chapel every morning before classes. He really encouraged folks to go. Despite his efforts, never really took off. Would just be the usual 1 to 2 super devout teachers, maybe a particularly religious student or so. Then, one Monday morning, right after homeroom, we hear the not uncommon announcement over the PA. "Will the following students report to the principal's office immediately?" Most of the time, this happened when those students were getting disciplined for some weekend shenanigans at a private school, so we could be punished for that sort of thing. Someone threw a raging kegger, someone's parents found out, called the school, and now everyone involved was getting punished. This is when I had my epiphany. Next Monday morning, I was at morning mass, bright and early, right at the front of the line to go into the confessional afterwards. Sat down with Father Jim and confessed to him in great detail all the trouble I and my friends had gotten up to over the weekend. Where we went, who did what, and to whom. Everything. The first time I think he was kinda surprised, gave me some acts of contrition to perform, said the absolution, and sent me on my way. I think the first few times he was actually pleased with himself. I'm really starting to teach these kids. But I'm pretty sure that by midway through the semester, he'd caught on to what I was doing. Every now and then, he'd make a sly reference or crack a smile. But he couldn't stop me, lol. You see, by going and confessing everything we did over the weekend to our principal first thing Monday, I was putting all that info into the bonds of the confessional. Anything I told him there, Father would never be able to act on without risking serious consequences. If he got to his office and his first message was from my friend's mom explaining how she'd caught us all drunk as skunks, smoking cigarettes in the alley behind her house, he could thank her for the info, but he couldn't punish us for it, because I'd already told him 20 minutes earlier all about it in the confessional. This tradition lasted all the way through senior year and graduation. Served me and my friends well. Some other folks must have figured things out as time went on. By the time I graduated, the Monday Mass sessions were always well attended, and Father had to start doing them earlier to save time for all the confessions he was hearing before classes. I don't know if it was me or Father that was guilty of the malicious compliance here. Did we play him by going to confession like he insisted, but for our own selfish reasons? Or did he play us, doing some 4D chess crap? I mean, after all, in just 2 years, he somehow managed to get dozens and dozens of high school students to start regularly attending Mass before class and going to confession weekly. Win-win? I would say this is definitely a win-win. Obviously, the students found a loophole in the confession process, and Father is sworn to confidentiality, so there's really nothing that can be done or acted upon through their wrongdoing. I mean, they're just kids. They're going to do stupid stuff, whether you are raised in a devout Catholic household or not. So I don't see anything wrong with this. Win-win. Ryugi commented, "I'm not sure who won here, if he won, getting you to participate, or if you won, staying out of trouble. I guess it depends on whether or not he was more interested in punishing people for wrongdoing, or for getting people to participate in holy events. It sounds like maybe he wasn't angry, so I think maybe he won." OP responded saying, "Oh, Father Jim, not his real name, was a heck of a guy. I'm sure he wasn't angry. He almost certainly knew what I was doing, especially as time went on. And knowing him, my guess is he just looked on the good side. He was always a silver lining kind of guy. He was getting more kids engaged in the church. They were sitting in the pews on Monday, listening to the reading and gospel and sermon, etc. Even if they're there for the wrong reasons. Why, they're there. Like selling a timeshare. They know the only reason you're in the sales pitch is to get the free trip. But regardless, they still have you in the room listening to the sales pitch." Our next story is, "I'll call your bluff and take the marks. When I was in high school, I wasn't very good at writing essays in English. I knew all the concepts, but fleshing out a few pages of BS wasn't something I could do in 45 minutes of class time. For a few weeks, we had a student teacher completing her prac block. Knowing that kids circle their substitute and student teachers like sharks, she didn't take any crap, but overcompensated, and more than a few of the kids in my class checked out or outright antagonized her. This just made her more hostile to the smart but teenagers we were. For me, checkout was when I tried to answer a question about the use of a very specific term in a poem about World War I soldiers. The author used wheeled chair instead of wheelchair. I put my hand up and gave some interpretation that made sense, and I was always told there's no wrong answers in these sorts of discussions. As a reward for participating, I was treated to a fairly harsh "no, you're wrong" noted. So we have to complete an essay on what we've learnt the last few weeks, and the question is along the lines of, how did the author make you feel when reading the text? Me, having mentally checked out of English class, not being good at that sort of thing and being the crappy kid I was, wrote a couple paragraphs summarizing the message of the text and saying that I didn't feel anything when reading it. The next Monday, we get our essays back, and I've got a 5 out of 25. More than I thought, so those 2 paragraphs must have been pretty good. The prac teacher takes me outside and goes on about how she's disappointed and I could have done better, and how everyone else wrote 2 or 3 pages, but I didn't get half a page done. It all seemed pretty disingenuous to me because she hadn't shied away from telling me or anyone else when we were wrong. She asked why I wrote that, and I replied that I genuinely didn't have an emotional reaction to it. Why lie? She then says I have no choice to either take the fail or rewrite the essay next class. Okay, I'll take the grade. No point wasting time. Her face dropped a bit, and she took a while to reply. Really? Are you sure? Yep, I'm no good at this sort of thing, remember? I didn't get it right in class, so why would that change overnight? Defeated, she sent me back to class and went next door for a few minutes. A little while later, I was called out again to speak with my actual teacher. She asked me why I didn't think I could do better and what I didn't understand about the question. After talking for a while, she said that I will have to retake the essay with a new text and question, one that was worded so I couldn't just say I didn't. In the end, I wrote around 2 pages and passed. Just. The teacher was there for another 2 weeks or so, and I noticed a few things. First, she didn't react with outright contempt when someone gave an answer that wasn't what she wanted. Second, she didn't try to play a game of wits against any more self-sabotaging teenagers. Bonus story about my actual teacher. She was younger and really nice, but now that I'm older, I think she was one of those sensitive but naive sorts of people. We had to come up with a TV pilot episode and read it out to the class. One kid read out the first episode of Burn Notice word for word. Top marks and a heap of praise. Okay, so first of all, Burn Notice. Wow, you're really throwing it back with that one. But as far as the actual story itself, I think by shutting down a student who actually has a genuine question about the material that's being taught is kind of tacky, and you're really asking for it. You can't be upset when the student then checks out because of that. So I don't think OP is in the wrong here. I mean, of course, from the perspective of the student, you're talking about a child versus an adult. So no, nothing wrong with that. Teachers should be encouraging these thoughts and questions. Maledicted commented, as someone who's tutored students and had to mentor at work, there's nothing more devastating than seeing someone lose interest in what you're trying to teach them, and knowing you caused it. I'm passionate about language and literature, and I try to meet people where they are. If all you want to read and write about are comic books, let's talk about them. If you interpret something differently from me, I want to know why so I can see it the way you do. I might enjoy it more that way. If I said something to a learner that caused them to immediately stop trying and give up, I don't know what I'd do. With that being said, that's all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed today's video, drop a like and comment below, and if you want to check out our other videos, click the video on the right. With that being said, I'll see you all next time.